Hi, this is Quick Recapped. Today, I am going to explain Passenger 57 movie. Charles Raine is a well-known British terrorist who has masterminded various heinous acts such as bombings and assassinations, yet has managed to evade capture despite his criminal record. The truth is that Charles is also an escape artist, who uses his power and deception to elude the authorities. In the first scene, the movie begins with Charles in a surgical room, surrounded by a group of medical professionals. He is scheduled to undergo a surgery to modify his facial appearance, and this will be his 10th such procedure. The lead surgeon offers Charles anesthesia to numb the pain during the procedure, but he declines the offer. In fact, Charles prefers to experience the pain in a conscious state. As Charles undergoes the surgery, a group of police officers have gathered outside the building. An anonymous source has given the cops a lead on Charles Raine's location, and they've arrived to take him down. The police chief warns his team about the dangerous terrorist they're about to face, cautioning that he's a highly skilled killer. As they approach the 13th floor, where Charles is scheduled for surgery, unfortunately for them, Charles is well prepared. Charles quickly kills the head surgeon, deftly evades the bullets aimed at him, and bolts out of the room. Charles then smashes through a glass window and jumps out of the building. After his daring escape, Charles Raine falling from the 13th floor and landed gracefully on the ground below, without a scratch on him. He took off running, but the police had cars, and soon they had him surrounded. After more than a decade of running, Charles was finally caught. Later, the scene then shifts to an airplane. On an airplane, the flight attendant, Marta, was doing checking every passengers one by one. Everything is going good, but suddenly man pulled out a gun and held her hostage. He threatens to kill her if his demands are not met. Marta quickly kicked the man in the leg, giving a nearby passenger enough time to take the gun away from him. The other passengers applauded as it was revealed that the entire ordeal was a training exercise to teach the flight attendants self-defense tactics. John Cutter, a retired Secret Service agent and decorated soldier known for his tough stance on high-level crimes, is taken away by the general manager of Atlantic International Airlines, Sly Delvecchio, who appears to be a good friend of John's. Sly offers John a job as the head of the counterterrorism unit, but John declines, stating that he no longer wants to risk his life for others. However, after learning that he would only have to work twice a month, John ultimately accepts the job offer. Meanwhile, Charles is brought to his cell where he meets with his attorney, who informs him that the authorities plan to take him to California for execution in the electric chair. The attorney suggests that Charles plead insanity to avoid the death penalty, but Charles violently refuses, slamming the attorney against the table and insisting that he is not insane. In the next scene, we see a shirtless John meditating and reminiscing about his past. The film then flashes back to a few years earlier when John and his wife were shopping at a convenience store. A robber entered the store and held John's wife hostage while attempting to steal money from the counter. Despite John's efforts to stop him, the robber shot and killed his wife. John retaliated by killing the robber, but the tragedy had a profound impact on him, causing him to quit his job as a special agent and isolate himself for months. Returning to the present day, John is getting ready for his first day of work at a new assignment. He is tasked with guarding a large Lockheed airline that has almost 200 passengers on board. John's seat number is 57. Hence the title of the movie is this. He is instructed to remain anonymous throughout the flight. The fateful flight to California indicating that the flight is ready for heading. Coincidentally, including Charles and 2 FBI agents also. One of the flight attendants is Marta, while the other one is a beautiful young girl named Sabrina. During the flight, a young boy pretends to shoot Charles, who responds by pretending to be dead. However, when he fires back, his handcuffs are revealed, causing concern among nearby passengers. Sabrina tries to calm them down that there is nothing to worry about. Later asks a suspicious-looking staff member to bring over a special service in a metal briefcase. Meanwhile, John, who is seated in seat 57, is frustrated by his talkative neighbor and heads to the restroom for some peace and quiet. Once he locks the door, Sabrina retrieves the content from the metal box and it turns out to be a gun. She then proceeds towards the two unsuspecting FBI agents and shoots them in the head, much to everyone's horror. After Charles unlocks his cuffs, 3 of his goons emerge out of their seats and threaten everyone to remain silent. Here, it is revealed that Charles had everything planned all along. When he got to know that the agents were escorting him in a commercial airline, he immediately hired some people to hijack it. In the next scene, Charles heads to the cockpit and shoots one of the pilots dead to assert his dominance. Then, he announces over the radio that they are going to change courses and that the plane is officially hijacked. However, if the passengers remain calm and obey his orders, no harm will come to them. John, who had gone to the restroom, overhears the announcement and becomes scared. He manages to call his friend Sly and inform him about the hijacking. John subdues one of the hijackers and takes his gun, then uses him as a shield to confront Charles. Charles, in turn, takes Marta hostage, leading to a tense standoff between the two. However, soon Charles lets go of the flight attendant. He shoots an innocent man to show that he is serious about his demands. He then aims his gun at John, but accidentally kills one of his henchmen instead. Taking advantage of the commotion, John and Marta run away towards the cargo hold, where they met the suspicious man earlier. He initially pretends to be innocent but then attacks John with a knife. After an intense fight, John manages to knock the man out with a kick and ties him up. And then they both goes towards the avionics section of the plane. John suggests that they dump all the fuel and force an emergency landing, but Marta disagrees, fearing that it could cause a crash. However, when John explains that it is their only option, Marta agrees. They empty the fuel and head towards the landing gear, which is the best place to jump from the plane without getting hurt. Fortunately, the plan works, and when Charles learns that they are running on low fuel, he requests the pilots to make an emergency landing at the nearest airport. Meanwhile, Sly and his bosses at Atlantic International learn that a hijacked plane is landing in Louisiana. Sly quickly takes a helicopter to the location. Elsewhere, John and Marta are waiting to jump out of the plane when it stops, but one of the hijackers attacks them. John is pushed out of the plane, and Marta is taken hostage again. Then at the ground, 2 police officers arrive, and they arrest John, even though he tells them he was the security leader on the plane. Charles, the hijacker, contacts the control tower and demands that the plane be refueled in 10 minutes. In return, he promises to release 100 passengers. The sheriff in charge refuses the deal, so Charles kills 5 hostages to show he is serious. This scares the sheriff, and he agrees to let the plane be refueled. Later, John is taken to the control tower, but Mr. Biggs suspects that he is one of the hijackers. Clever Charles then calls Mr. Biggs and lies that John is one of his gang member who has betrayed him, which confirms Mr. Biggs' doubts. As a result, Mr. Biggs orders his officers to detain John in the basement. However, John manages to fight off the officers, takes a police motorcycle, and heads towards the airstrip. After refueling the plane, Charles follows through on his promise and releases 100 hostages. However, while the authorities are distracted by the commotion, he and 2 accomplices sneak away to a nearby fair. At the same time, the FBI arrives at the control tower and requests to Mr. Biggs for a full report on the situation. The head agent becomes angry when he learns that the sheriff had beaten up and detained John Cutter, revealing that John is actually an FBI agent. John secretly follows Charles and his accomplices to a nearby carnival fair, hoping to catch them. However, one of the hijackers discovers him and tries to shoot him, but accidentally hitting an innocent person instead, resulting in a full-blown chaos. John climbs a Ferris wheel, and one of the hijackers follows him. They fight, and John ends up throwing that man off the Ferris wheel, in which that man immediate death. John then surprises Charles and manages to capture him. Then police and other officer take John's away and Delvecchio arrives also there and praises his friend John for his efforts. But the danger is not yet over. Charles warns the officers that if he is not released, his accomplices on the plane will start killing passengers one by one. Despite John's attempts to negotiate, Charles remains unyielding. So, when there is no any other option left, then FBI and police officers make a plan and they allow the Charles to go inside the plane. The plan by the authorities was really superb. According to the plan, they will deploy the snipers on the top of nearby building. As soon as Charles and other hijackers will appears, then snipers will shot dead them. John was leading the whole mission by the permission of authorities. In the next scene, two members of authorities leads Charles toward the plane, but as they about to enter inside the plane, they let to know that the suspicious-looking guy have killed all the original snipers that were on the top of building, and now other hijackers also trying to kill the FBI agents. Soon, in the midst of the chaos, a shootout occurs between the hijackers and the FBI agents, resulting in several deaths and also that suspicious-looking guy. Despite this, the plane begins to take off, but John is not willing to give up. With Sly, he commandeers Mr. Big's car and pursues the plane. Their plan is to grab hold of the retractable landing gear and climb inside the plane. Although this is a dangerous move, John executes it with ease. Once he gets inside the plane, he kills one of the hijackers and he sneaks onto Sabrina from behind and knocks her out and saves her. Now inside the plane, their only remaining hijacker is Charles, and before confronting him, John heads to the cockpit and instructs the pilot to change course and return to the Lake Lucille airstrip. After this, in the final battle, John and Charles fight fiercely and are evenly matched. However, a stray bullet hits a window and causes a sudden loss of air pressure. The main door is blown out, and Marta, who was standing nearby, is left hanging from the plane. John manages to get Charles close to the broken exit and they continue fighting. In the end, John emerges victorious and kicks Charles out of the plane, defeating the terrorist. With the threat neutralized, the passengers celebrate and start dancing in relief. After defeating Charles, John contacts his superiors at the control tower to inform them that the terrorist has been neutralized. His bosses are relieved and overjoyed at the news. The plane finally lands safely, and all the passengers are escorted to safety. John, exhausted by the events of the hijacking, chooses to avoid the reporters and instead walks away with Marta, his new girlfriend. The movie concludes with Sly taking credit for the success of the operation and proudly speaking to the reporters. As the story comes to a close, the audience is left with the sense of relief and triumph that comes from defeating a dangerous threat and saving innocent lives.
Thanks for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoy the movie.